My name is Ejfa Singh, and I'm an Indian, and I've been born in India, and I live here. I live between Delhi and Kashmir, which is really my sort of family home. And I am an artist now, but I have been an academic. I have done philosophy at the University of Delhi, my PhD in philosophy. Of all people, Kierkegaard. My thesis was on Kierkegaard. And I then moved out of Delhi and moved into a farm, and where I became, to start with, becoming engaged in farming as well as pottery. And I then moved from pottery to enameling. So at the moment, at this present time, I am an enamelist. But I also have an organization which I started several years ago in Kashmir, which engages with young people in the field of art and ideas, really. So that's where I am right now. The organization is called the Dara Shikoh Center. Dara Shikoh was an amazing character, somebody in the 17th, 18th century, who was a sort of philosopher prince. And he met with a terrible end because his brother Aurangzeb was very ambitious and actually took over the throne. But Dara Shikoh was both a sort of a kind of patron of the arts, but he was, I think, he was also involved with with mystics, to the extent of being a practitioner of certain mystical practices. And he was a very interesting character in that sense. And he was also one of the first people in India to have thought of the mingling of the two oceans of Islam and Hinduism, an idea way before its time. And I think for one of the reasons why he was in fact, killed finally, actually, because it was unacceptable to a lot of fanatics at the time. So we decided to name our organization after him, because he did visit Kashmir, and he represented to us the sort of thinking that we really believe in, the kind of coming together of different thoughts, of different ideas, of people who come from different cultural and religious backgrounds, and something that really fits in, of course, with your temple of understanding and the idea of interfaith work. So that's why we named it after him. I was one of the very fortunate few, I think, of the few people in India who've had the great privilege of having a well-rounded, fairly westernized education, if you like. And so the sense of belonging to a particular village or a particular community has never been very strong with me. Although in India, as you know, we have these parallel realities. So you can, just round the corner, you see a kind of people living a life which may come from the last century, whereas there is something happening which seems very futuristic and very sort of the now, just parallelly at the same time. So I put that in because, much of my education was in the English language, but I did have a fairly traditional upbringing. So I was exposed to the idea of traditional worldviews, in a sense. And I have always tried to bring my contemporaneous, sort of being a contemporary person in this time and age, with a sense of connection with what sort of is not just the past, but which is sort of perennial in this country. And so when I started to work, I started as a potter, and making sculptural work in clay. I found that a lot of this sort of came into my work, but I also needed not just to think of myself as an individual artist, but also to be belonging to a community of artists, perhaps, and not just to a community of artists, but also to a community of artists, craftsmen, if you like, people who work with their hands, which I think is something very important for me, something that as a potter and now as an enamelist metal worker, I find it kind of grounds me. And it takes me into a kind of quiet space when I'm working, particularly when I'm, working towards a sort of project that I may have thought of, and not just working on a, on just a piece of jewelry or something like that. But then it takes me to why I'm doing this, and it's because I feel the 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 kind of compulsion to connect the inner work, whatever that may involve. In my case, the combination of introspection, meditation, prayer. How does that work out there, come out there in my work, and from there, how do I then involve other people in the process? Um, I do believe that one of the things that one can do that through is teaching, and I've started teaching as well. But the spiritual aspect of my background, I think, is something that you can't push on people at all. So it's, I think, the process of creation, of creativity itself, is to some extent spiritual, without pushing the point of the content being overtly spiritual. But also the fact that as an individual artist, I need to connect with people. I'm not one of those people who can work completely in isolation. I might need time to complete something or do a project, but I have to keep going in and out, in a sense, and go out there. And to that extent, I think our organization has worked with community in Kashmir for several years, where we've done all sorts of workshops, and we've tried to underline this idea of diversity. If you're coming from a completely different background, first of all, diversity which is expressed in nature, and so just to open your eyes and look around before you start working, perhaps, and to look at the great mysteries of what surrounds us, and which seems so everyday, but which can be quite magical if you really open your eyes and open yourself to it. And then also to other people in that group, so that you have to look at some level at where you're coming from, what your biases may be, for instance. So in a theater workshop that we may have done, a lot of gender biases come up, for instance, which need to be addressed. And so to go to a deeper level each time. So I don't know whether that answers the question directly, but I think that is what I'd like to say for the moment about my creative work. As you know, Kashmir is part of the great Himalayan region of this country, and it's like the canary in the mine, because any climate change that is happening is so clearly visible in the melting of the glaciers, and in the water crises that occur in climate. You can see how weather is changing. I've seen it over the last 10 years. So it's very obvious when you're out there in nature, what is happening. And so we've tried to engage always whenever we have a festival, for instance, of the arts. We've had themes that bring in the issue of the importance of engaging with the idea of climate change, because and this could be done in various ways. So for instance, we've asked people to come and speak on the subject. There's a very strong World Wildlife Fund branch in Kashmir, so they've come and spoken a lot on the loss of habitat for wild animals there, and therefore the man-animal conflict that comes up. We've had wonderful projects, like a very long canvas dropped from a great big building all the way down. So it starts in the pristine Himalayas, and by the time it comes down, it's full of plastic bottles and muck and so on. So this is a wonderful project that we've kept, and so we pull it out from time to time to show. So in various ways, we ask people to perhaps speak about their engagement with nature, and how they feel, that as an urban person, this disconnect between themselves and what is actually happening out there. So I think it's brought quite a few ideas in theater as well. We've brought in this the question of desertification of of various areas within the Himalayan region, where really, I mean, there's barren land now because waters have receded and rivers have changed course and so on and so forth. So it's been very interesting. We've tried to bring this in through our different projects. But I think to extend that idea of climate change, it's also just a question of man and environment. I mean, woman and environment, me, myself. How do I see myself as part of a larger reality? Because unless I see that reality, I mean, unless I have that perspective, I'm really not going to be concerned about, that larger whole. So I need to be able to reposition myself, and that's something we try and do for young people, as well as, with our contemporaries, with discussions and seminars around this theme. I think that to be part of a movement like the Interfaith Movement, it requires personal commitment, and it requires a certain amount of deep honesty. I have to look at what my biases are, because I can intellectually say, all faiths are equal and we are all the same and so on and so forth. But I need to look deeper, and I need to look at where I'm coming from when I'm going out there and speaking about my commitment to a movement like this. I need to be able to connect with other people from the right place. So I have to look constantly at my own biases and try and work on them and look at that, and also connect with whatever I consider to be my spiritual center, my higher power, whatever I would like to call it. And then go out, connect with a lot of other people who may be working in the field as spiritual activists, if you like. I think the time for that has come again, because the easiest thing to do is to become cynical, to be embarrassed to use the word religion or spirituality, particularly if we know it's been so misused, in the past, and that young people have closed themselves to that avenue, perhaps. And that's a bit of a tragedy, because I think what we need to do is to sort of open it up and say, look, you can decide what you want of value or worth, and you can pick it from different things, and you can go out into nature. For instance, I have a son whose spiritual batteries are recharged when he goes up mountaineering, and for him, that's the place where he gets his strength and his personal commitment to something greater than himself. And other people may do it through other things. So I think we need to connect with the diversity of people. And as somebody very interestingly said, are we going to be the passionate who exhorts all to sing, or the zealot that insists on choosing the songs? I think that's so beautifully put, because the main thing is to sing, is to go ahead and do it, and do it with sincerity and commitment. So I think I can see that this would involve a great many people also connecting without taking positions. Also, I think very importantly, and this was again pointed out to me by my son who visited the last Parliament of Religions, he felt there weren't enough young people involved. And as I said, I think that's a very important issue that we need to look at. So I feel that there are 2 or 3 aspects to the present and future of the interfaith movement. I think that without using the same old language, if we were to kind of approach it slightly differently, I think we'd have a much better chance of involving a lot more people, particularly young people. If I were to take a priest, a monk, and a mullah to a college and have them speak, I think I'd have a very thin audience, to be honest. But if I took, let's say, if I took another young person and I took somebody else, and we had a conversation between ourselves, and we had a discussion, and we didn't talk down to whoever was sitting there, and we engaged people, in the idea behind the interfaith movement. What are we looking for? We're looking for harmony. We're looking at compassion as a very basic human need, for individuals to grow as well as for communities, and then nations, and then the entire world, the global village. To be able to come together, we need the sense of compassion, which I feel cannot simply be confined to your own community or your own family or your own nation even. So the idea of opening that up, how we do this, I would invite a discussion on this. I would really be very interested to be involved in a kind of ongoing talk. You can, of course, bring in concrete ideas which gel with this. One of them being climate change, for instance, the environment at a larger level. Man and the environment. I mean, woman and the environment, and also women. The work of women in so gender issues, for instance. We have a very interesting Buddhist nun, an English woman, who, I don't know if you've come across her, but she's a wonderful woman who lives up in near Dharamsala. And she has engaged with the Dalai Lama to bring nuns to a position where they can get the teachings, the old Nagarjuna Buddhist teachings, which they were banned from taking. So the nuns were doing sort of, the work of supporting the monasteries, but not actually getting the teachings themselves. Because one of the ideas which had kind of, which the Buddha had never spoken of, but which had come up later, in history, was that if you had the woman's form, if you have the female form, you can't attain the final spiritual goal. So, I mean, she's been working relentlessly to bring that change into Buddhism. And an amazing lady. Similarly, we have another person, a Muslim gentleman, who is a very erudite in the Hindu scriptures, for instance, but he's contemporized them. And he has a largest following, and he's done this walk. So he says, the walk, the talk. So he literally walked from the southernmost tip of India to Kashmir a few years ago, meeting people along the way. He had a bunch of young people with him, and they say their lives are completely transformed because they had to get out of their comfort zones. They had to meet people that they would never have met otherwise. They had to live in village accommodations. They had to deal with situations that they had never seen before. So challenging situations, but doing it differently. I think this is what we need to look at in the future. At the present moment, I feel that whoever's doing whatever work they're doing must continue to do so, even if they feel that the climate is not conducive for it, or if they feel that they are not encouraged to do it. But there are ways of engaging with each other, of having, everything does not have to be out there on a podium, necessarily making a kind of taking a stand or making a show of it. I think quiet work can go on, at certain times under the radar almost. And I've seen this happen in Kashmir. There is a beautiful Sufi core in Kashmir, which you'd never imagine, because all you hear about is, militancy and, all of this kind of violence and so on. But there is this core, and I've been to one of these meetings where people sit around in a room, and at the center there are 5 or 6 people singing of the divine. And they take the name of the mother goddess as well. These are Muslim men who in other, in another level are, shopkeepers or artisans or whatever they may be. But secretly they have still that sense of the deep spirituality that's of that place. So, there are wonderful things. There are people keeping very archaic philosophies alive. There's a wonderful woman called Bettina Boma, who's an expert on Kashmir Shaivism, for instance. So there's a lot of people in this country and everywhere in the world, I'm sure. And we just need to reach out and start reconnecting and being more active in that way. I'm Jyoti Singh, and I really believe that the most important thing that we need to do today in this present moment of time where there is so much happening around, and we've been brought back to our inner way with a shock to who we are today because of the coronavirus going on. I think we just need to remember to be open-minded. I think we need to open ourselves to a diversity of ideas and sort of always keep in mind a sense of compassion. It's too easy to judge what's happening around the world. And I think for instance, I really need to back off, look at how other people are dealing with, all sorts of issues in the world, including climate change, and open myself to change myself.